The concept of dualism, the idea that the world contains forces that are in constant opposition to one another, is ancient. One of the most ancient of all of these philosophies is Zoroastrianism, which came out of Iran around the 6th century BC. According to the beliefs of this religion, there are two primary forces that battle over the soul of man. These are represented by a being of the light who was all good, called Ahura Mazda, and his opposite, Ahriman, who was evil and a being of darkness. Many other religions also espouse this principle of duality. Most of them propose that eventually the forces of light will overcome the forces of darkness. It seems to be a recurring theme that light represents what is good and darkness represents what is evil. The concept of light is integral to the secret society of Freemasonry. Albert Mackey, who wrote several books on the meaning of Masonry and on its various rites and initiations, said in The Symbolism of Freemasonry this about the meaning of the concept of light to Masons. Light was venerated because it was an emanation from the sun, and in the materialism of the ancient faith, light and darkness were both personified as positive existences, the one being the enemy of the other. Two principles were thus supposed to reign over the world, antagonistic to each other, and each alternately presiding over the destinies of mankind. The contest between the good and evil principle, symbolized by light and darkness, composed a very large part of the ancient mythology in all countries. In the Christian tradition, the Prince of Darkness has become synonymous with the terms Satan and Lucifer. However, most people are not aware that these terms do not really mean what it is traditionally thought that they mean. Elaine Pagels, in her book, The Origin of Satan, says that in biblical sources, the Hebrew term the Satan describes an adversarial role. It is not the name of a particular character. Although Hebrew storytellers as early as the 6th century BCE occasionally introduced a supernatural character, whom they called the Satan, what they meant was any one of the angels sent by God for the specific purpose of blocking or obstructing human activity. So Satan is actually simply the adversary. And about the history of the term Lucifer, I'd like to quote from a book written by a 33rd degree Mason, Albert Pike, who was a founding father and leader of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in the United States. From 1859 until his death, he was the Grand Commander of North American Freemasonry. Pike gives a detailed explanation of the ancient mystery schools as he outlines the rituals and initiations of Freemasonry in his book, Morals and Dogma, which was published in 1871. Of note is the fact that he mentions over and over again the concept of duality, of dark versus light, as it has existed from ancient times. He says that, and these invisible intelligences, like the stars, are marshaled in two great divisions, under the banners of the two principles of good and evil, light and darkness, under Ormud and Ahriman, Osiris and Typhon. The evil principle was the motive power of brute matter, and it, personified as Ahriman and Typhon, had its host in armies of doves and genii, fallen angels and malevolent spirits who waged continual war with the good principle, the principle of imperial light. Osiris, Ormuzd, Jupiter, or Dionysus, with his bright host of Shapans, Izeds, angels, and archangels, a warfare that goes on from birth until death in the soul of every man that lives. We have heretofore, in the 24th degree, recited the principal incidents in the legend of Osiris and Isis, and it remains but to point out the astronomical phenomenon which it has converted into mythological facts. Pike, speaking to initiates of the 19th degree of Freemasonry, has this to say about Lucifer. The apocalypse is the apotheosis of that sublime faith which aspires to God alone, and despises all the pomps and works of Lucifer, the light-bearer. Strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not. So let's break this down. First, etymologically, Lucifer does mean light bringer and son of the morning. However, the light brought to Lucifer is not the enriching kind light of God, but a deception, a light that blinds the feeble, sensual, or selfish. It is a false light. Here's another quote from Pike's Morals and Dogma. The devil is the personification of atheism or idolatry. For the initiates, this is not a person, but a force, but which may serve evil. It is an instrument of liberty or free will. They represent this force, which presided over the physical generation under the mythologic and horned form of the god Pan. Thence came the he-goat of the Sabbat, brother of the ancient serpent, and the light-bearer or phosphor, of which the poets have made the false Lucifer of legend. So what does this mean? First, that Satan, Lucifer, whatever name for the personification of evil you use is not a person, but a manifestation of free will, that force which may serve for evil. The second pertains to the origin of the character of Lucifer. Lucifer, Pike contends, was a conglomeration of different pagan gods. The goat represents the pagan god Pan, a god of nature who was also a symbol of sex and fertility. The ancient serpent is obviously the serpent from the Garden of Eden who tricked Adam and Eve into eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Finally, the name Lucifer comes from a misunderstanding by St. Jerome of the Latin name for Venus. A Roman goddess represented the evening star in the Aeneid. She was also the goddess of love and sexuality. Hence, Pike is here contending that the name Lucifer was based on a misunderstanding, and that the Lucifer portrayed in much of Christian literature is a fairy tale, a distraction from the real evil or potential for evil. It's important to understand these quotes from Pike's book because many people think that Pike was saying Lucifer is God, and clearly he's not saying that. There is another supposed quote that is often cited where Pike says in this book that Lucifer is God, and you see that all over the internet. However, this is incorrect. I went through the entire book, Morals and Dogma, and that quote is not to be found there. Unless that quote is to be found somewhere else, but it is not in the book Morals and Dogma. So why does it seem as though Pike is making Lucifer out to be of the light which we associate with good? Well, he is saying that Lucifer is the false light. Helena Blavatsky said this about Lucifer. And now it stands proven that Satan, or the red fiery dragon, the lord of phosphorus, and Lucifer, or light bearer, is in us. It is our mind. I bring this up because in a lot of the books that I have read about spirit releasement therapy, there are terms used such as Satan and Lucifer. And it's important to note that these are the terms that clients are using to describe their dark attachments and entities while they are under hypnosis. So I want to make sure to be careful about not putting any religious connotations on spirit releasement therapy. Most religions have different terms for these beings. Personally, I prefer to refer to them as negative energies, dark beings, and dark entities. These beings do exist no matter what we choose to call them, and they do cause harm to their human hosts. However, during the process of spirit releasement therapy, we see these beings as requiring compassion as creations of the one infinite creator. This is in opposition to the position of the Catholic Church, which sees them as unclean and needing to be cast out. The problem with this is that by exorcising them, it is possible for the dark energy beings to seek out another or other unsuspecting victims. And I think this is the reason why there's the story in the New Testament about Jesus driving out the demons and having them go into pigs, which then ran off of a cliff to their deaths. William Baldwin, in his classic treatment manual on spirit releasement therapy, says that in clinical practice, the clients describe the characteristics and behavior of demons, the legions and the minions of Lucifer, and these are the names that the clients used. These are the terms that hypnotized clients, again, use while they were under hypnosis. In addition, these dark beings come in different colors according to the clients, different shapes and sizes, and appear in different numbers in various locations in the physical body. According to Baldwin, these beings hate humans, despise Jesus Christ, fear and loathe the holy names of Jesus, Mother Mary, Archangel Michael, and others. They operate according to a hierarchy, with some beings being at the top and very powerful. They obey the higher masters out of fear, and they are treacherous, liars, disloyal, and competitive with one another, always jockeying for position in the hierarchy. In his clinical work with clients, Baldwin found the most prominent of dark energy beings to be disruptors, threateners, tormentors, and destroyers. Others are designated as watchers, whose job it is to observe when spirit releasement therapy is in progress and then report back to what he calls their dark headquarters. Sometimes they pose as guiding spirits of the light. However, a true spirit of the light is compassionate and loving, and these dark beings are the very opposite of that. One of the most disturbing things Baldwin reports is that for every demonic being that is attached to a human or even to an earthbound spirit, because they also do attach to earthbound spirits that are attached to people as well, there are many others waiting in line behind that one. And if one is released, there will be many others to take that one's place. Most of them have names, but sometimes will not reveal them when called upon to do so under spirit releasement therapy. The mission of these beings is to cause as much pain, suffering, disruption, chaos, damage, destruction, and even death as possible to as many humans as possible. This is because they get their energy from causing humans to suffer. The assignments these beings are given to carry out include destruction of the family, interference with projects that advance the human condition, and most of all, interference with any and all forms of love. According to Baldwin, the dark beings have never incarnated in their own body. They do not bring the baggage to their host that earthbound spirits do. Many humans make pacts with the dark forces in order to advance some agenda or fulfill some self-serving purpose. These contracts bind the host to the entity, and as a result, the human is under the control of the dark forces, completely in bondage. When the host dies, the dark one will separate from the physical body, but upon reincarnation, the contract is once again resumed. I have two examples to share that apply here. The first one deals with someone who made a deal with a dark entity to save the life of one of her children. When she was on her deathbed, the dark entity came to claim her soul. When I did a reading, she told me she was surrounded by darkness and she begged for help to get out of the darkness. At that time, it was very early in my study of spirit releasement therapy, and reading what she said really scared me, so much that I tore up the paper with the writing on it and threw it away. The second example was when a woman asked me to do a reading in order to hear from her grandfather. What came through was a description of a family curse, which had been passed down the line for generations. When I did that reading, I definitely felt the need to cleanse and sage my surroundings afterward. Here's what that reading had to say. This message is from your grandfather. I know you did not really know much about me and our family situation, but perhaps I can help to make things right. A lot of the strife you are now experiencing is the result of not talking and communicating about family history. I never talked about my past with anyone, not even your grandmother, my wife. She did not know the burden I carried while I was alive. She did not know the torture I endured or the sacrifices I had to make to keep her living in a state of luxury. I had to make pacts with very powerful people who blackmailed and forced me to do terrible things. I became subservient to these dark ones who controlled my every move. I was ashamed of having surrendered any sovereignty to these wealthy and powerful dark occultists, but once I became involved in their dark doings, there was no way of escaping my fate. I could not tell anyone about what I had done because I was too ashamed that I put wealth and money and position above my family and above God. The light went out of me and I existed in darkness. The signs were there for all to see, but no one was really looking, either that or they did not see. The way it works is that once a human being gives over their soul to a dark one, the dark one takes over, and the human soul then takes its place in a hierarchy of dark souls. In order to please its masters, it must continue to feed the darkness. At the time of my passing, I had surrendered all the light of my being, and they came for me on my deathbed in order to take my soul fully in payment for my material wealth that I accrued during my earthly life. I have been surrounding your mother since my passing, holding on to the shred of life force that she has left in her. I am turning her to the dark side because where I am still required to recruit living souls to turn them to the dark side. How do these dark entities find their way into a live person's energy field? Feelings of anger, hatred, and revenge cause holes in a person's energy field, opening the door for dark entities to enter and attach. These dark beings can pass from one human being to another like an infection through sexual contact. They do not understand love, compassion, humor, loyalty, joy, or happiness. They obey orders that are given to them from their masters because they don't understand there's any other way. They believe if they fail in their assignments, they will be punished severely. They are threatened with annihilation or extinction, not death, because they don't possess physical bodies. And those entities that do succeed will be promoted in rank. Baldwin says that these dark beings are controlled by their masters due to 3 primary deceptions. First, they don't know there is a spark of God within them. Their masters tell them there's nothing but blackness and darkness. 2, they can be destroyed and will cease to be is also a deception. This motivates the beings to continue the work of the dark agenda for fear of their own survival. And 3, the demonic beings nearly always fear the light. They are told it will burn them if they approach it, and of course they have no knowledge of it, so the fear keeps them away. The heart of spirit releasement therapy is to help dark energy beings to see that these 3 perceptions are untrue and that they can reclaim their status in the light. During the process of spirit releasement therapy, when a dark being is encountered, the therapist has to be very careful to lead the questioning and not allow the dark entity to have any control over the conversation. It is crucial that the client not give permission to the entity to come into his or her body or even use his or her voice. The therapist commands the dark being to, in the name of the light, stay back from her. She does not give you permission to come in or join in any way. She refuses permission to control her mind or body. Do not touch her body in any way. Speak your words and she will repeat your words. So in other words, then the client under hypnosis will speak the words without allowing the entity to take control of any part of the person's body. So at that point, they are attached to the person's energy field, but they have not taken over the person's actual body. Those kinds of possessions are extremely rare, and it's more likely that people become what we call obsessed and possessed. There's a difference between the two, which I'll have to talk about in another video. And it's very, very important to realize how to have good psychic hygiene and to protect yourself so that these entities cannot come in and attach to your energy field. And it's very important for the therapist also to have good psychic hygiene so that the entities do not try to enter and attach to the therapist's energy field. So in another video, I will also talk about ways to protect yourself from any kind of obsession and possession by these dark force beings.